Hello and welcome to Big Friendly Grub. I hope you are safe and well. Now, if you're watching this under lockdown, which is when I'm recording this, then you might have been trying out some various different kinds of baking. Maybe you are new to baking, or perhaps you've been baking before and you are wanting to try out new things, because what else are you going to do in this time? If you've got nothing else better to do, might as well try and do some baking if you've got the ingredients for it. Now, you might have been baking like normal loaves of bread or cakes or something like that, but maybe you want to try something that you won't bake at home as often, something that you would generally go out to the shops and buy instead. Now, I'm talking about bagels. Now, I absolutely love a bagel. I love bagels with like bacon and egg in, or like cream cheese and smoked salmon, or anything really. They are so fantastic, they're so versatile, and they've got that lovely, unique, chewy texture to them. And that's because they've got a specific way of making them, and that is because they are boiled first before they're baked, and they are just amazing, and they're a lot of fun to make as well, but they are a little bit tricky if you've never done them before. Now, I was lucky enough to go on a baking course a few years ago, and one of the things we made was bagels, and they're a lot of fun to make, but I don't make them at home very often. I haven't made them for a while, but I thought, well, now's as good a time as any to try and make them again. So I'm hoping to pull that memory out of the recesses of my mind, or wherever the hell I'm keeping it, and show you how to make bagels. So let's get started, because there's a few steps to them and we want to get going because we want bagels. Now, our bagels start off pretty much like any other bread recipe with our dough, and I'm going to add in here 500 grams worth of strong white bread flour. Then we want 7 grams of yeast. So I'm using one of these handy dandy sachets. Can't speak today or any day. Then we want some salt, probably about 7 grams worth as well. So we want a bit of sweetness in our bagels, and that's one of the things that sets it apart from a normal bread recipe. So you could use some brown sugar, or I'm going with some honey. So I'm going for about a tablespoon's worth of honey. Let's see if I can get that out of here. I'm nearly running out. Then we want to get a dough hook onto our stand mixer. You can do this by hand. It just takes a little bit more effort and a bit more elbow grease. Going to get that down, and we're going to need probably about 350 millilitres of warm water. Now, like any bread recipe, it could vary. Sometimes you need a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less. It all depends on the flour you're using and basically what the weather's like. Sometimes it can come down to that. So I'm going to start it off and just slowly start to add in some water, probably about half at first. Then as that comes together, I'm just going to gradually add the rest of the water until it starts to come into a dough. You don't want it too wet. It needs to be a nice, smooth, elastic dough. And when it starts to form a dough that isn't too dry, but it isn't too wet and sticky either, we can now then set it off to knead for probably about 5 to 10 minutes. If you're doing it by hand, then I would definitely suggest 10 minutes. Right, this has had 7 or 8 minutes worth of kneading, and it looks lovely, and it's so lovely and smooth to the touch, and it's going to be nice and stretchy. So we now pop this back into our bowl, cover it up. You can use a little hat like what I've got. You could use a tea towel, you could use some cling film, as long as it's covered, and this will go into a warm, dry place to brew for about 1 to 2 hours, or until the dough is doubled in size. It's been just over an hour, and this has doubled up nicely in size, so we're going to knock out the air of this, which is really satisfying. Take it out the bowl, you can see how lovely and smooth it is still. Now, I think we should get roughly 12 bagels out of this, so we're going to want to divide it into equal pieces. So I think about 65 grams each will suffice. So I'm going to tear off bits of dough and weigh them out. You may think this is overly meticulous, but for things like this, it's kind of essential to weigh them out, so you've got equal pieces. If you are able to eyeball it, well played, because I cannot. Then we're going to want to turn these into balls, so roll them in your hand. Best thing to do is then pinch underneath, so you can try and get everything nice and tight as possible. Then roll it under your hand a bit, tuck it under to get a nice ball shape like so. That looks pretty nice, and then we're just going to want to put these onto a lined baking tray like so. Sometime later, I have 12 roughly evenly sized balls of dough, which I've now covered with cling film. The reason being is because I'm going to pop these into the fridge for about 20 minutes to firm up a little bit. That's going to make them easier to handle when we're going to be putting our holes through the middle. And we're going to be doing that just using our thumb, basically, just to ease out a hole into it. You don't want the hole to be too big, but you also don't want it to be too small, because otherwise, when basically these rise up, the dough proves, your hole's just going to disappear and you'll just end up with rolls instead of bagels. So these are going into the fridge for about 20 minutes. Right, these have had 20 minutes in the fridge, so we can now try and shape our holes to make our bagel shape. So what I like to be able to do is get a bit of flour on my hands, just to make sure that my hands don't stick to the dough too much. And then we'll get one of our pieces of dough, and then you just kind of want to get in there with your thumbs and shape a hole through it, like so. And then you can just kind of work your way out a little bit, almost like into a donut shape. And then you can kind of go like this. This is quite fun actually, until it's a decent size. Because remember I said that as these prove, the holes will close up some. So you don't want to get it out too far, but you want it a decent size as well to kind of counteract that. You can even do it like this, which is kind of fun. Whee! That is probably going to be enough. So I'm going to pop this down here and move on to the rest of them. Right, we've now got 12 holes in our dough to create our bagels. Now these just need to have another 40 minutes or so to prove, maybe an hour depending on how warm it is on the day. It's not as warm as it was yesterday. These would prove really well yesterday, but it's a bit cooler today, so they may take a little longer, but we're going to give them at least 40 minutes to prove, and we're just going to cover them up with clean tea towels like so, and give them that time to prove and hopefully puff up and double in size. So we'll come back then. Right, it's been about 45 minutes and this has given them time to prove, so let's unveil them. Whee! There we go. So those have puffed up quite nicely. They're not too big. They are looking pretty nice. The holes are they are now ready to be cooked, and cooking them is a two-stage process. So what we need is a very large pan of boiling water. So this is probably, I don't know, about 5 litres worth or something like that. And the reason we boil our bagels first is because that gives it a nice skin, which gives us that unique chewy texture of the bagel. And it also means they don't puff up too much in the oven and just turn into rolls basically. So into this water, we're going to need to add some bicarbonate of soda, about a tablespoon's worth. Whee, look at that. Also a tablespoon's worth of honey. Generally you would add like malt in here, or maybe some treacle or something like that, but I don't have any of that, so I'm using honey. Don't expect these to look quite as professional as the ones that you would buy in the shops. Usually bagels in the shops, they're usually steamed rather than boiled, and that means that they're able to keep their shape better. And because we're going to be moving these about a lot, don't be surprised if they lose their shape a little bit and look a bit more rustic. They're still going to be delicious and they're still going to look really good. And they're just going to look a bit more homemade, because they are, but they're still going to be brilliant. So we're just putting 2 or 3 in at a time and letting them cook for 30 seconds in the water, because if you do them for too long, they'll be too chewy and they won't be very pleasant. And turn them over as best as you can. It's a tricky art and you don't want to splash the water everywhere. And when they've poached for 30 seconds on each side, take them out and pop them back onto the tray. Then repeat this process until all your bagels have had that poaching time. As an aside, you don't want the water absolutely really rolling boil. You just want it on a nice simmering boil, so it's not going to bash the bagels around. Then after what takes approximately 10 minutes, you have your poached bagels. So these are pretty much ready to go into the oven, but it's just at this point, if you want to start adding any toppings on, then you can. So you can go for poppy seeds, sunflower seeds, sesame seeds, or what I'm going to do with these for, because they're not quite as pretty as the others and they need a bit of help, I'm going to add on some caraway seeds over the top of these, because that's what I have. I don't have any poppy seeds, don't have any sunflower seeds, so I'm having to make do with what I've got because it's locked down, and that's what we do at the moment. But I'm not done. I'm going to chuck over some garlic granules, because these are going to be my really savoury ones. These will be lovely with some cream cheese or something like that. And I'm also adding some onion granules as well. But really, you do what you like with these. If you want to leave them plain, leave them plain. Now at this point, your bagels are ready to go into the oven. So they're going into the oven at 220 degrees C. That's about 200 degrees C on a fan oven. And I'll put all the conversions as usual into the description or into the recipe that you can find the link to in the description below. So in these go for about 25 to 30 minutes. We'll come back then for hopefully some lovely bagels. Right, it is 25 minutes later and we have some lovely looking bagels. Look at those, they've come out really well. And the ones with garlic and caraway and onion, and they smell incredible, these ones. So those are looking really good, smelling really good. And now we just need to give them a little bit of time to cool down for me then to be able to try one. But they're looking really good and they are smelling really good. So these need to go on to something to cool down and we'll be back ready to try one. And after a short amount of time to cool down, because I'm impatient and I don't want to wait too long to try one, plus they're nice warm, here are some lovely bagels, all stacked up because I've totally Instagrammed them, because it's all about the gram. But these look really good, they smell really good. I'm really pleased with how they've turned out, considering I haven't made them for probably a good couple of years. But they look great and they take a little bit of time. There's a few steps to them, but There's really nothing like making your own bagels. It's really, really satisfying, and they've turned out really well. So all that's left to do is to try one. So I think I'm going to go for this one right here because it's a little bit smaller than the others. I have had lunch already, so I don't want to go overboard. And it's probably got to be nice with some cream cheese. I'm going to get some cream cheese onto this and give it a go. Look at that. Looks really nice. Ooh. Ooh, hello, you can see all the others. Screen closer! So there we go. One homemade bagel with cream cheese on, because that's a brilliant way to have it. If I had some smoked salmon, there would be smoked salmon on there, but I do not because I didn't go out and buy any. I'm not going out specifically for smoked salmon. These look really good. They've come out really well. I'm really happy with them. Like I said, especially haven't made them for a few years. I've managed to draw that knowledge from the depth of wherever I was keeping it. Some might say I pulled it out of my brain. Some might say I pulled it out of somewhere else. But either way, they came out really well. They smell really good. Can't wait to try this. It's going to be really, really satisfying because there is nothing like making your own bagels. You know, if you've been trying out, making bread and stuff like that, and you want to challenge yourself a little bit more, I suggest giving these a go because they are really satisfying to make. But I'm going to stop talking because I really want to try this, so I'm going to grab myself a half of this bagel and give it a go. Oh yeah. That is really good. That is a bagel and a half. You've got that pull, you've got that chewy texture of the outside, which comes from poaching the bagel first before they go into the oven. But it's just got that perfect bagel texture. It's soft in the middle, but chewy on the outside. It's got a really, really good texture. So good and so worthwhile. They might seem a little bit intimidating, but they are so worth doing. So if you fancy pushing your baking skills a little bit, trying something new, maybe something out a little bit of your comfort zone, then give them a go because they are totally worthwhile. But that's it from me today. I hope you found the video useful. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, do all the usual things. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, but otherwise stay safe and well, and I will see you next time on Big Friendly Grub. Bye.